Hey, what's going on, guys? I got a special guest here today. We have Shawn Livingston. He's a combat veteran, decorated ultra marathon runner, and he's a person who overcame drug addiction and he's a mental health advocate. In his documentary, 100 Miles to Redemption, he inspires millions of families and provides hope through his own personal accounts with addiction, recovery, and healing through the power of fitness. Now, before we get started with Shawn, I want to let you guys know me and my new wife, Madison, watched Shawn's documentary. It's on Amazon Prime, and we were blown away. They talk about the story, and it's just such an incredible, incredible viewpoint of Shawn's life. And Shawn, how was it for you to even think about that experience? Because it's so bizarre to have a documentary on Amazon.
Dude, it's one of the most bizarre, surreal things that's ever happened to me. I can remember getting the phone call, and it was this director named Andrew Chabet, and he started telling me this whole grand plan that he wanted to film this documentary, and I almost hung up on him. I thought it was one of my boys messing with me. Um, People like me don't get phone calls like that, but for it to have happened and be received in the way it has, and to get the amount of messages that I have over the years from it, from people that it's touched, it let me know why I did it for sure.
I love it. I love it. So, Shawn, let's get started. Where does the journey begin through being a veteran and then having this adversity through addiction? How was that for you?
So I come from Youngstown, Ohio. It's the northeast tip of Ohio. It was real big back in the day when the steel industry was thriving in the United States. And once that went under, our whole area went under. There wasn't really much opportunity there once the steel mills were gone. And so right after 9/11 happened, I joined the Air Force. And so I shipped off to the Air Force and I was gone for years. And I can remember before I left, I didn't really see hard drugs until I had like gotten out of high school. I'd see coke and stuff like that, but nothing like crazy.
Yeah.
Then I leave for a couple years with the Air Force, and when I come back, the entire area is just absolutely leveled from OxyContin.
Oh, wow.
So I was truth be told, I was a partier anyways.
Yeah.
Never met a drink or a drug I didn't like, and so when I came home, I had to partake. And people told me like it's going to get a hold of you, it's going to get a hold of you, and it did within a quick amount of time. And so couple attempts at trying to get clean, and I got clean enough that I knew I needed to make a decision and kind of get my life back on track. And so I joined the Army after my time with the Air Force and shipped to Texas. That's what got me living here in Texas. And then as soon as I got into the Army, as soon as I got stationed at Fort Hood, we immediately started training, getting ready to deploy to Iraq. And after being there a couple months and doing a bunch of training, at one point I had kind of injured my back. We were doing drills called 3 to 5 second rushes, and basically you're simulating like you're in wartime. You're in full gear. You got your weapon with you, and I went down real fast, and I came back up. And when I came back up, I just felt this tweak in my back. Didn't think anything of it, and the next morning I woke up. I couldn't even get up out of bed. I couldn't roll over. I couldn't sit up. I had herniated two discs in my lower back. It was pinching my sciatic nerve. It was
Oh, man.
extreme pain. Could barely walk. And unfortunately, at that time, I don't think the education was what it is now as far as opiates goes. And so their remedy at the time was to hand me these really big bottles of opiates and hit me up with steroid injections and kind of send me on my way. And so that was the kind of reignition of the addiction allergy with me, and it was just dumping fuel on the fire. And so by the grace of God, I made it through deployment without my own life being taken, or somebody else's life being taken from my actions or my habits due to being addicted to drugs. And then it would eventually see me getting kicked out of the military. And then once I was out of the military, I was off and running with the drug life.
Oh my God. I can't even believe that because to me it's so I the story is so beneficial to so many because you've recreated your own journey. Because like you see Shawn today, he's very gets up at 2 in the morning, very straight at like doing the right things, and it's like, how did this happen? So you come back and where do you go on that? Like what like how do you even break out of the drug addiction? Like because in the documentary it talks about how you were just trying to get money from your mom and trying to do all of these different things, and it was very challenging for everyone.
Yeah. getting money from mom didn't last long. That was at the very beginning. She wised up pretty quick, and so man, it was just years of me bouncing around state to state, just trying to figure out if I could change my location that would change the problem. Eventually I would end up getting myself into a lot of trouble with the law. I caught 2 felonies for heroin possession. I had to go away for 2 years. And then I got out and then immediately caught 2 more felonies for heroin possession. So I'll tell you that there was a time in my life where I ran around in the streets like I was a real bad tough guy. I thought I was a bad dude. Had lived all over, military service, everything. And I'll tell you, I stood in front of a judge, and that judge looked me dead in the eyes and told me he was going to charge me as a habitual criminal, and he didn't see any reason to sentence me to anything under 20 years.
My God.
That moment was when all the tough guy stuff went right out the window for me. I'd already been there. I didn't want to go back, and so that was the kind of the desperation moment where I became willing to do anything I could to try to change my life. But at that time, it was just a foregone conclusion. I was going away. There wasn't anything I could do about it. And so I had spoke with the lawyer, and he told me he could give me enough time where I could at least try to go to treatment and get cleaned up before I go, maybe at least get on speaking terms with my family. And so I did. Um, Now, through my whole journey, I've been to treatment over 12 times. This last time at this treatment center that I went to, it was state funded, a very, very modest place. It's not like they were doing any earth shattering new studies or anything on addiction, but it was just pretty straightforward. But it was just the time in my life where I was just rock bottom of the barrel. I got no other options. And now I'm trying to get clean for me as opposed to trying to get out of trouble or do it for family or anything like that.
I
And so
think I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that's so important right there. Doing it for you. It's not like these podcasts, like that's it for everything.
yeah,
There's a time and a place where the message lands correctly with people and they're ready to make that change. So
yeah.
whether that's this moment right now or whether it's a moment 5 years down the line, it's so important to be receptive and open to these messages when they come, because we're not always going to be in the best thought process. We always have 1,000 things going on, and it's so important for us to be there and be like, I can make this change. So, what was really different about this time?
So what I'll tell you is, I'm an addict. I'm still an addict, and as an addict, I love throwing all my eggs into one basket. And so I'm getting out of the military. They diagnosed me with PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, agoraphobia, just a laundry list of ailments. And their answer at that time was to hand me 15 bottles of pills and send me on my way. And so that's me really trying to address my mental health. I went to the
Yeah.
group, went to therapy, I did all that. But at the end of the day, none of that stuff kept me sober. It didn't make me happy. A lot of it, in all honesty, the medication wise felt like a band aid. I'm not telling
Yeah.
people not to take medication. I'm just saying for me, it wasn't the answer. And so then, in the recovery world, you start hearing about 12 steps and, your, spiritual health. And so I'd already tried to address my mental health. And so now I'm like, all right, this is the key. I'm just going to address my spiritual health. And so 90 meetings in 90 days, sponsees, I was doing it all. And I kept having to do it over and over because eventually I would always realize that I would trap myself in like a recovery bubble where everything I talked about, everything I did, every event I went to, everything I spoke was just recovery, recovery, recovery. And what nobody ever talked to me about, or what I never knew to put any focus on, was like getting back to living a life, find something that actually inspires me and makes me want to get up out of bed every morning, that makes me excited to be sober, makes me excited to be alive. Nobody
Yeah.
talked about that. And
And
so, go ahead.
yeah, I think there's a component there where it's the planning versus the action.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of time where we need to plan and make the decision and where we want to go and reflect on that. But there's sometimes where you just got to get into action and to get moving. And like those recovery meetings are very beneficial for people. But like you're saying, there's a point where you can't just keep talking about the same thing. You got to go take action because they'll talk you right into an issue. Like it's funny. I had this thing today where they had like a physical therapy person
Mm-hmm.
where it was like an online one and they're like, "Oh, do you have any pain?" Like I signed up because I was like, I'm gonna get this free tablet. I'm gonna be able to maybe learn something. This person on the other side kept going. hey, where's your back pain? Do you have back pain? Is there pain? Like, I'm like, lady, you're not gonna get me to admit to, like, I don't have pain. You can
Yeah,
do whatever you want, but I don't have pain. And then they're like, oh, do you want to meet 3 to 5 times a week? I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I just want to learn this skill. But if you go to a person who's looking for something, like if you go to a doctor who's a pharmacist, they'll give you drugs. If you're going to a surgeon, they'll give you a surgery. Like, you just got to realize who you're getting this advice and these opinions from, and
right,
make sure that your circle is big enough where you can see different perspectives on it.
exactly. And I try to adjust my mental health. I try to adjust my spiritual health, and the only thing I hadn't done yet was try to adjust my physical health because I didn't think they were connected.
Yeah.
And so I can remember being in treatment. At this time, I was about 8 months sober. I remember looking in the mirror, and I absolutely hated who I saw. I had a huge gut. I felt like crap. I looked like crap. It didn't matter how sober I was. I hated myself, and so
Yeah.
I found out about this little running group that met in downtown Austin at 5 a.m. And I was like, cool, man, I'm going to try that. And so let me preface this, like, you saw the movie. I was never a runner growing up. I remember the first time I heard people did something called cross country, and I was like, you what? Like, you just go run? That's a thing. Um,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. If I was running without a basketball or a football in my hand, I was in trouble for something. But never could I have imagined what running could have done for me or my life or my recovery or anything. But man, I started running, and pretty quickly, I remember my first run, I could barely finish 2 miles. I was still smoking a pack of Newports a day, lungs on fire, hated my life. But I got done, and I just felt this sense of accomplishment that it had been so long since I had felt that. And so all
Yes.
I just wanted to feel that again. So I kept going back. And
I I love that. Yeah, no, I had a very similar experience. I did my first marathon was in Lake Tahoe. And when you do it, it was back in 2019, and then 2021 I did the New York City Marathon with my brother. And when you do these hard things and these challenging things, you start to realize that, like, there's so much more for me out there.
yeah,
I can take on so much more. The body is ready for more. And there's a lot of us that just abuse the body. You can abuse it by running miles, or you can abuse it by eating food. Like, they're both abused.
yeah,
Um, but one's going to help you live a little bit longer. And then it's also going to help that mental of, like, when you look at someone and you're like, yo, I ran 20 miles today. What'd you do? And it's 5 a.m. They're like, what? What do you mean you ran 20 miles? That makes no sense.
right.
Yeah, no, it definitely gives you that edge. So I love that.
Yeah. And dude, I kept running, man, and it ended up becoming some of the best mental health medication that I had ever found in my life. A lot of the stuff that I was dealing with started subsiding. It didn't go away, but it got much more manageable. And then I just fell in with the right people. And one friend in particular, her name's Penny. She changed my life and saved my life in many ways because she introduced me into trail running and ultra running, and she saw something in me I didn't see in myself. And so she was the person that actually trained me up for my first race. She trained me up for a 10K, and I can remember that night getting done with this 10K, and I was feeling myself. I was like, "Look at me, drug addict, just did 10K." And I remember she looked at me dead faced, and she was like, "Yeah, that was all right. You could do more." And I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm looking for a pat on the back. I just did something here. And she's
Yeah.
like, "You could do more." And so the next race I went out and I did a 30K, and then she did it to me again. And then the next race I went out and did a 50K, and she did it to me again. And then I did a 100K, and it was right around that 100K mark. I did that my first year of sobriety. And that's kind of where I took a look around and was like, wait a minute, like, I think I've been introducing myself as Shawn the alcoholic, Shawn the drug addict for so long that I had began to think that that was my identity. Um, Being out in the middle of summer in Bandera, Texas, on some rough terrain and running 100K your first year of sobriety lets you know that you're capable of a lot more than you've been giving yourself credit for. And so that
Yeah.
just lit that fire, man. And I never look back. And running has done some pretty incredible things in my world.
Absolutely. And then it becomes, now it's not Sean the drug addict or Sean the alcoholic, it's Sean the runner
Yeah.
or ultra runner. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And you start
Yeah.
to realize these identity shifts. And I'm just sharing this for the audience, that you might have the identity of I'm a father, or I'm a speaker, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, but you can change your identity at any moment, at any time, because there's so many of us that think we're stuck. We're never stuck. We have tons of options. We just choose not to use them all. So it's
Mhm.
important to have that reframe and be open to those new opportunities of what you might become.
Yeah, hands down. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. So for you, I mean, 100K is unbelievable. Like that's, I saw this, and the thing that made me really like light up at the documentary was I'm like, people train their entire lives and don't do races of 100 miles, especially through the trails and all this adversity. You abused your body for so long, and you're still able to do this.
Yeah.
So, what does that make you think about the world and like what you think about it in regards to what's possible?
So much, man. It helps me a lot with my message when I go speak and when I talk with other addicts that I work with or alcoholics, and trying to get them to understand that they're capable of the same thing. I didn't grow up a runner, but so many of us are so beat down from all the bad things we did in our past, and we let these things haunt us and all that. And running, man, in this very special way just showed me that that's not the case. It translated in a completely different way. It something simple that we've been doing since small children somehow later in life absolutely transformed my story, my experience, my life.
Yeah, I love that because it shows us that our past does not equal our future.
Right.
It shows us that we can create whatever life we want. And usually we're running away from pain instead of going towards pleasure. But sometimes that pleasure can be a little painful, but it's good to go after that because you can change your life at any moment. It's just really being open to that opportunity. And you mentioned earlier when we were pre talking about waking up early. So, like, was that 5 a.m. run for the first time? Was that intimidating? Were you like,
Yeah.
why would I wake up at 5 a.m.? Like,
Well,
these
yeah.
guys got to be crazy.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I didn't know people operated that early. It had been a long time since I got out of the military. I didn't realize civilians are out there running around like this. But man, once you get in that world, I don't know. I love the feeling of knowing what I'm able to get accomplished before the sun comes up, or honestly, before most people are even out of bed. I'm able to accomplish quite a bit. They probably accomplish a lot more after I go to bed nice and early, but I don't know, man. I just enjoy that. It's when I'm most focused in the morning, and it's when I'm most motivated for sure.
Absolutely. So, what caused you to start waking up early and kind of getting into that routine? And like, what is that today? Because I was blown away when I heard this. I was like, I don't think people know.
So it'll be a funny reason. I want to go back real quick to something you said earlier about being able to like change your story at any time. Um, my story amongst addicts isn't any, if I was in a room full of addicts right now and I tell my story, it's not really going to raise any eyebrows. To people that aren't in the addiction world, then it does. And so once my story kind of started getting out there a little bit amongst the running community, the Austin Marathon approached me and asked me to do an interview. And in that interview, they ended up asking me the most important question I think I've ever been asked. And they'd asked me if I could go back and talk to my younger self, what would I tell them to change? So maybe none of this stuff had happened. And I sat there and immediately my brain starts going crazy. There's so many things I could tell my younger self. But the more I thought about it, I came to the conclusion, like, I'm very sorry for especially my family or anybody that I hurt along the way. But now where I'm at in life, like, I completely understand that I had to go through every single thing that I've been through to be who I am today. And I wouldn't change that for anybody. So I wouldn't change a thing about my story or my past because I know it's made me who I am. Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that because people want to sit here and we've become a society where it's comfort is preferred. What's the fastest line? How do we remove as much adversity as possible? And half the time it's like, dude, go into the fire. Like, let's get some adversity. Like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, we're not taking the car. We're gonna run 2 miles to the bakery and we're gonna run back. And you're like, why would you run 4 miles? Can't you drive? Yeah, but like get the body moving. So
Yeah,
I completely hear what you're saying where adversity is and like for me, it was more forced adversity. You went through adversity through so many different things, but it's important to build that muscle because it is a muscle where we can overcome a lot of these challenges.
right. Getting back to your other question, it ties in with that too of why do I wake up so early? So it's kind of twofold. The the deeper answer I would say is when I started running, I ended up becoming pretty good at it pretty quick. And so I won a marathon. I started placing consistently in these ultra marathons. And I'll be honest, I used to get a big kick out of running against some of these people because they're elite runners, elite ultra runners, and they've been doing this their entire life. And I was shooting dope for most of mine. And here I've been doing it a year and a half. And I'm looking around and it's like, man, I'm beating these people. And so I always I enjoyed that. And the reason I think is because I think as an addict, man, I've become very comfortable being uncomfortable. I think addicts are willing to take it to a level that a lot of regular people aren't. And so I think it definitely played in my favor. And so just having that edge of knowing that I wake up earlier than anybody else, I'm out running miles before anybody else, it was a mental edge for me. But then the funny part of this is I discovered early, I was running in downtown Austin one morning and it was about 4:30 in the morning. And all of a sudden I have to use the bathroom. But Starbucks is about the earliest thing to open up, but it doesn't open until 5 and I got 30 minutes. And so I'm either going to have to dip down an alley or something. And so I'm like panicking. And so luckily I had made it just as Starbucks opened and everything was good. But I vowed that day, I'm never leaving my house in the morning before a run without having used the bathroom before. So that just always became my routine of if I'm meeting people to run at 5, I have to get up enough time that I'm going to have my coffee, do whatever I got to do, and then I'm out. And so it's just continued to be that. And then I just really grew to love the early morning like that. I don't know. It just, I'm firing on all cylinders as soon as I wake up.
I completely agree. I think the morning is one of the most undervalued things. So earlier this year, I actually, me and my wife now, we lived in
Feel weird saying?
it is so weird. It's so weird. I'm trying to get used to it, but it's weird. Yeah, we moved to not moved, but we went to Europe for 7 weeks. And when we went there, the funny thing was she was still working US hours, and so was I kind of. So it's 6 or 7 hours ahead. So
Mm-hmm.
we would have these mornings from like 8 to 2 and just explore, have the day, do whatever. You're not getting messages, you're not getting anything. And then we'd go to bed at 6, which was like midnight their time, and you
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like move on, go to the next day. And I was like, this is so awesome. Like, how cool is it to have more of the day and enjoy that experience? So I completely get where you're coming from because if you're up at 2 and you're doing all of this stuff, no one's going to contact you till like 6.
Right.
And like you just have so much time to do your own thing.
Yep.
And the funny thing is that people don't realize is that if you get up in the morning, people are like, "Oh, traffic's always awful, blah 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 blah." And it's that's not true. Like if you go 15 minutes before your usual time, it's probably exponentially better. I'm
Yep.
not saying it's there's no traffic, but if you just do everything a little bit earlier, like we've got a routine now where we literally will work out like 5:30 or 5:45 to like 6:45, and then we'll go and the food store opens at 7 a.m. So we'll just go to the food store right afterwards. And you're like, food store? Why are you going to the food? Because if you go on Sunday at 4 p.m., it's going to be slammed. But if you go
Right.
at 7 a.m., you're done in 10 minutes and all
Yep.
the new items are there. And you're like, I can't beat it. Like, this can't be bad. And it's just these little things where you're like, I know that trip would have taken 40 minutes just to do
Yeah.
the same wrap around. But when there's no traffic, you're like, blessing. So I literally tried everything I can to travel when there is no traffic. And that usually entails early morning or a little bit later in the evening because you start to realize how much time is wasted. And we
Yeah.
sit there and like go, I'm so busy. It's never us being busy. It's us not being intentional about the actions.
Yeah.
So for you, you also mentioned something about having some mentors. How have
Mhm.
mentors played a part in your life and overcoming that?
Huge. Uh, the only other thing that I would put more focus on besides having a mentor is just the people that you choose to allow to be around you.
Yes.
Your team of people, your friends. My stepfather used to tell me all the time, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. And I let it go in one ear and out the other. And I look back at, I'm 41 years old and I look back at my 41 years of life and whatever the people I was hanging around, I was doing whatever they were doing.
Like,
And so
that,
now my life is filled with surrounding people around that are way better than me or way smarter than me because they make me elevate my game. What were you gonna say?
yeah, no, that's where Edwards Consulting, the whole concept came from, because it was 2019, and I was doing one-on-one coaching, and then I started to realize this group concept in 2020, and I realized that if you can have a group of like-minded people looking to win, You're like, wait, what do you mean win? You're looking for people who are motivated, then you can have a better surrounding and better conversations. And I'm like, okay, I can do this at least once or twice a week, where now I'm having good fueling conversations that are much better than just shooting it with someone where you're like, oh, Shawn, like, how's the weather today? And it's like, who cares about the weather? Like, I
Yep.
make my own weather. Like,
Yeah. Um, but then as far as the mentors go, like I use an analogy a lot of time with the people I work with, and I tell them identify your Super Bowl. You
I
have to
love
identify what the most important thing in your world is, and then talk about the team of people you assemble around you and the importance of that. And we all know what it's like to be in a locker room or a group or a class where you have that one bad apple that ruins the whole bunch. And then the next thing is you better have a good coach if you want to go win a Super Bowl. And so it's just about having those people that have been where you've been, they've been through it. You trust where they are, you trust their word and everything like that. And so just having those people around me, because just because I'm 7 years sober, life isn't always perfect. It still comes at me, and I still make stupid decisions. I still say stupid things, and so being able to have those people that are a little bit deeper in the game than I am, that I can bounce some stuff off of, that care about me enough to let me know when I'm messing up.
Yeah, I think the value there of having someone give you an unbiased opinion that's not in the deal, that doesn't care, and they're just like, I'm just here for your best interest. And I think that's a good idea, or I think that's a bad idea. Like, you want to make sure that everyone's on yeah,
And I think there's everybody wants to be an expert nowadays and stuff like that. And so I think if somebody doesn't have a mentor, if you don't have a coach, like, you might want to take a look at your ego, because you know, in my field, if you want to get into the gym or you want to talk about recovery or running or any of that stuff, I know my shit. And excuse my language, I don't know if you swear on here. I know my stuff, and but I'll be the first one to admit I still learn every day. And so I need somebody that knows more than me so I can learn from them. The day I think I got it all figured out is a dangerous day for me.
100%. And the other big thing to realize is that you, when you're looking for a coach or looking for someone to help you or looking for anything, we are all different skill sets in many different things, right? So, like, let's say my running ability, I'm at like a 4 or 5. We got Shawn over here who's probably at like a 9. Can Shawn help me with running? Yes. Maybe the podcast, you know what I mean? It can be, you can have any iteration of anything where everyone you're around has different skill sets than you.
Right.
So, and they might have done the reps more than somebody else. So, regardless of what it is, you can learn from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, how can the CEO learn from the janitor? Everybody can learn from everyone. So it's
Yep.
that real understanding of like whatever conversation you go into, hey, am I going to provide value here or am I going to receive value? How do I think about value? And what can I do to help people? Because the more value you give, the more receptive other people will be to be like, oh, wait, no, I really like that guy. That guy's really cool. Like, and it's that opening and realizing that because there's so many people who are like, pay me right now for my advice. And it's like, I don't know. But then there are times where that's a good idea too. Like
Right.
if someone's really good at something like and they're too busy, like go offer them a high hourly rate and they will probably say yes.
Right. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So I think it's really important that it doesn't have to be this formalized coach. Sometimes the formalized coach is good, definitely better than no coach. But I think there are ways to have friends and different people to spitball on. And it's important to think about that.
100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for you, how do you think about when you look at people? Because I know you're working in the gym, I know you're working through adversity, I know you're working with addiction. How do people really make that instant change? Because I feel like there's so many people sitting there. They might not be addicted, they might not be struggling like that, but like they're definitely their life is not at where they want it to be. So
Right.
like what is the action step to make that full change? Like what are the question maybe they could ask themselves or what could they do to make that change?
So it's perfect you said this, because it goes right back to what I say about identifying your Super Bowl, right? And so my last time in treatment, I'm sitting there, I'm the mindset I'm going away to do 20 years, and you saw in the documentary in my story, there's at one point I had kept a folder of all the work I had done the whole time I was in treatment, the whole time I was at the VA, every AA meeting I went to, every note I took, I just kept this folder. I'm not an organized person. I have no idea why I kept this folder. I have to believe it's something greater than me looking out for me. But so I keep this folder, take it to the lawyer, and he opens it up, and he's just like, "Wow, like I never expected this out of you. Like you've given me something really here to work with. And so whatever you're doing, I need you to keep doing it." And so I was on fire after that. Like that was that first glimmer of hope that I needed. Um, my fault. I apologize. I forgot your question.
Oh, you're good. I was saying for people who are
Oh,
doing
the
looking to make change. Yeah.
identifying your Super Bowl. So at that moment in my life, when I got that glimmer of hope, the most important thing in my world was two things. Is this going to help me stay out of prison? Is this going to help me stay sober? Those
Yeah.
were the two most important things in my world. And so a lot of the people I talk with, I'll bring up the Super Bowl thing and identify your Super Bowl. And there's a lot of people, let's say they're in a treatment center or they're trying to lose weight or something like that. And they'll give me the answer they think they're supposed to. And they'll be like, well, I want to get sober. Well, is that really your Super Bowl? Or are you just here because you want to get out of trouble with your wife or get out of trouble with your job? Like, what is truly your Super Bowl? And so anybody that's listening to this, if you wake up, wake up tomorrow, and if you know truly in your heart, my Super Bowl is that I want to lose weight or I want to improve my mental health or something like that, right? Every single decision I came across, period, I asked myself those two questions. Is this going to help me stay sober? And is this going to help me stay out of prison? And so that went for everything. That went for the people that I kept around me. That went for the food that I put in my body. There were so many mornings when the alarm would go off and it was raining outside or it was too hot, too cold, whatever. Everything in my body's telling me to hit the snooze button. And so I would sit there and I'd have to ask myself, is me hitting the snooze button right now, is that going to help me stay out of prison? Is that going to help me stay sober? I've been hitting the snooze button my entire life and it never kept me from getting locked up and it never kept me from staying sober. So now I knew I needed to get up and go run those miles. And so I'd ask myself this for everything. And so then I started hanging around better people. Then I started paying more attention in groups. Like I literally asked myself this for everything. And I asked myself so much, it just became a working part of my mind. And so again, to that person listening to this and they've identified their Super Bowl and they want to lose weight, you can wake up tomorrow morning and you can realize that you're taking the first step towards changing your life, or you can wake up tomorrow morning and realize that you're just sitting in the same shit that you've been in. And so if you identify that Super Bowl and it's truly the most important thing to you in the world, that's all the motivation you're going to need to start making those next steps. And then it's just being willing to get outside of your comfort zone and, you know, feel like you look silly or whatever the thing is that's keeping you from doing it is what you need to be doing. If we're talking about the gym, I work with people every day, and I'll tell you what kept me out of the gym for years was the fact I didn't want to go in there and feel like I looked stupid. I didn't want people to realize I didn't know what I was doing. And so a couple different things had to happen for me. I got my heart broke, all these different things, and that's what gave me that last nudge I needed to get into the gym until I figured it out. Heartbreak and shame could be a major motivator. And so I went in there and I checked out every book I could in the library. I watched every YouTube video of a person that I could find that I trusted. And I taught myself and I learned. But that was the most important thing in the world, was doing some of these things. And so people have it in them. You just have to want it bad enough.
I think that's incredible how it becomes what is the most important thing? What is the Super Bowl? And no matter what is going on, we are going to constantly adjust that question for like, is this activity helping me towards the Super Bowl? Yes, no. If it's a no, then maybe we adjust. We figure out different ways to make it work because you can't do the thinking for somebody else. You have to do the thinking for yourself and you have to figure out how to make these things work. So I think that is amazing because it makes it so simple. Like you sit down, what is the goal? Where are we going? And it's not so much I'm bad at where I'm at. I don't feel good. No, we're taking progress and it's going to be little steps and we're going to get there, but we're not going to pout about it. We're not going to hold ourselves back. So for you, what do you think? Because I mean, the biggest thing for you is that you're authentic with who you are and you share your vulnerability. And why do you think vulnerability is so important? Because there's so many of us who are like I'm stoic. I make no errors.
Yeah.
And you hear these things, and then sometimes you see vulnerability, and you're like, you want people like people actually really connect with that.
Yeah. I sorry about that. Good. I didn't I can remember the first thing when they did the documentary, the first thing they did was film the trailer. And so, documentaries, they don't make, they're not blockbusters. They don't make a ton of money or anything like that. Usually it's just a passionate director that wants to invest his own money in a story that he identifies with. And so that's what this was. And so they filmed the trailer and then they brought it back and they invited like 150 to 200 people to a venue in Austin and they were going to unveil the trailer. And so at this time, a lot of people in the running world knew who I was. They knew me as this ultra runner running these crazy trail races. And my story was out there a little bit, but not a lot. And so I can remember the lights going off and they put this trailer up. And within 3 minutes, every person in that room heard that I was a 4-time felon, kicked out of the military, heroin addict that was homeless, that family didn't talk to him, that went to prison. And then all of a sudden the lights come back on. And the only feeling I can wait to describe it, it was like mom pushed me out the front door to school on my first day naked. It just felt like everybody could see me. And at first I can remember looking out at all these people and I'm like, oh my God, what are they going to think of me? They're going to think less of me. They're going to think I'm a mess up. They're going to, think all these different things. And I spoke for a little bit. And when I was done, that entire room stood up and basically converged on me. And every single person in that room started telling me how their brother, sister, uncle, mother's cousin had alcohol, drugs, mental health, sexual trauma, abuse, violence, everything. And a light bulb went off for me and I was like, wait a minute, like I did not know a world existed where I could take all of this pain and all this stuff that I could been through and ever use it to help people. But all I did was stand up here and they just heard all my stuff that I thought they were going to judge me for, and now all of a sudden they're able to come up off all their stuff. And one thing about addicts or alcoholics, we're used to sitting in rooms and talking, being open about our problems, but most people aren't. And so sometimes it takes somebody like me to come up off my stuff and talk about my things for somebody to be willing to come up off of theirs. And then I watch the effect that it has on them. And I watch them cry. I get these messages of people that my stories touched or helped them open up and stuff like that. And so that right there, that was enough for me to understand. And so that's always my goal whenever I go speak or work with people, is to get them to understand, like, you have a life experience that I don't. I have a life experience that you don't. We've all been through different things, but I don't care what anybody says. We're all recovering from something. We've all been through some stuff, right? And so, if you look at it, you've seen the movie 8 Mile.
Yeah, of course.
I call it the 8 Mile effect. And so, what does Eminem do at the end? He gets up there for the last battle and he spits everything that you're going to say at him, and then the dude just stands there and has nothing to say. And so that's what happened for me. It was like everybody knows my stuff now. They can't use it against me. And in this weird way, people almost look up to me for all these things, these bad things that had happened. You know what I mean? Just because I'm willing to talk about them. And so under it gives it a whole new value when you're able to take this experience you have and use it to help people. You suddenly become pretty proud as opposed to pretty ashamed, because the things that I was most ashamed of in this world are now the things that I'm most proud of to stand in front of hundreds of people and talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to the fact that it humanizes us.
Yes.
Like, we want to look around and watch Sean run his race, and you want to sit there and go, he's a superhuman. It makes no sense. But you're like, no, we're all human and we all have errors and we all face adversity and we all go through these different things. A lot of us want to hide it. A lot of us don't want to be authentic and face it. But when we are, it opens up so much more
Yeah.
because, and it's even more powerful because you already have the finish line of like what success looks like to you now. So working backwards, it's like, I went through all of that and accomplished this.
Yeah.
Why can't you accomplish this? Like, and it's that realization that we can change whatever moment we're not who we are. We can change at any moment and anything's possible. And Sean, I really appreciate you taking the time because this is huge for everyone that listens. And then also, you guys have to watch 100 Miles to Redemption. It's on Amazon Prime. It's so easy to watch. It's literally just type in 100 Miles to Redemption, and it really, really does make a profound difference. Like I said, me and Madison watched it and we were both tearing up because it was one of these moments where the directors crushed it, your family crushed it, you crushed it. Like it is so profound and it's so powerful. And I think everyone should really watch it. So, Shawn, where can people learn more about you, or where can they interact with you, or what's the best way to go about that?
So on social media for sure. I do a podcast as well. It's called I Am Redemption. That's where I do most of my communications and stuff like that. So it's just I Am Redemption on any social media platform or YouTube. Um, but yeah, just hit me up on social media, and I have people that reach out to me every day. If you know somebody that's struggling, I work with some of the best facilities in this country. Try to get them plugged in with help. But this is what I do, and in all honesty, this is what keeps me good, is being able to use my experience to help others. So if you know somebody that's struggling like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Absolutely. Amazing. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you, brother. It was an honor.